Hi, this is Michael. Welcome back to the World War II Book Guy. Today I want to talk about a pair of books, Samurai, Saburo Sakai, and Japanese Destroyer, Captain Tameichi. Now I put these two books together because they're an interesting pair. They're unique in that they are tactical memoirs from a Japanese perspective, and there certainly aren't a lot, particularly available in English. In fact, these are the only two I have. They're also similar in that the interviews on both, as well as translation for in the case of Hara, from a memoir he had started, were both done by Fred Saito. Now he was an American who was well known for doing interviews, particularly with Japanese veterans of World War II. Aside from these, his translations have gone into a number of books on World War II, including Samuel Lee Morrison's 15-volume set on the U.S. Navy in World War II. I look down because that's where it's at. Anyway, so Saburo Sakai and Samurai. Now, Sakai was a Japanese fighter pilot. He had 28 claimed victories. Most of those were early in the war: Philippines, New Guinea, Java, Dutch East Indies, and they were against American and Dutch pilots flying Brewster Buffaloes, P-39s, P-40s, and he was flying the A6M0. Ultimately, he was in the Solomon campaign around Guadalcanal, and he was attacking what he thought were Wildcats from behind. It turned out they were SBDs, which, of course, have twin 30 caliber machine guns in the back. He was severely wounded, lost one eye, but managed to get his aircraft almost 4.5 hours back to Rabaul. He spent a couple of years convalescing and training, and came back for the latter part of the war, where he claimed a couple more victories. But it's a fascinating book because it's written from that perspective. And he talks a lot, of course, as a fighter pilot, about his engagements and tactics, both his and opponents' tactics. But also gives some really interesting insights into just to the life of a fighter pilot and other fighter pilots when they weren't in the air. And he talks about a lot of other well-known Japanese aces as well. The second book, Japanese Destroyer Captain, Tameichi Hara, he was, as the title implies, a Japanese destroyer captain. And he commanded a number of destroyers, and ultimately a destroyer flotilla and a light cruiser. He was the only one of the original, according to this, the only one of the original destroyer captains at the time of Pearl Harbor to survive the war. But again, it's a fascinating book. He gets a great deal into the tactics they were used, both ours and his, the weapons, and even the day-to-day life on a Japanese destroyer, and talks a lot about the technical details and the maintenance as well. So they're both really fascinating. They're both worth reading. A couple comments on them. Samurai was written by a guy named Martin Caidin. Now, Martin Caidin never actually met Saburo Sakai. He took the interviews that Fred Saito had done and wrote this book. And there's been controversy over this book. The issue, I think, is that he wrote this to be a bestseller rather than a true biography or such. And whereas Sakai claims 28 victories, he bumps it up to 64. There's also claims that he added some stuff that might be fictional, but that's because I think he was trying to write a bestseller, again, not a memoir. Japanese Destroyer Captain is a much more straightforward book. It's said that Saito, aside from using his memoirs and translating his memoirs, spent up to 800 hours talking with him. So it's very much a straightforward book about his experiences. A couple of similarities between the two. Both are, they're extremely cocky and dismissive of their opponents early in the war. Now, Saito, again, is flying an A6M0, which was technically superior to the aircraft that were being flown by his opponents at the time. As the war progresses, even when he comes up against Wildcats and later Hellcats and Corsairs, that cockiness goes away. Hara is the same, and in that, again, there's some validity to that. In surface actions early in the war, the Japanese were superior in a couple of ways. First of all, was their night fighting capability. The United States had not worked very hard on that, so they came off very superior night combat, night engagements. And also they had the long lance torpedo that was, aside from its long range and its power, was an incredible weapon against Americans. But he concedes as the war went on with American air power and American radar to improve their abilities in night engagements, the superiority of the Americans. And then finally, what I find amusing is that both of them, Bushido aside, had the same time honored aspect. I'm an ex military guy myself, ex Army guy, and it's a time honored aspect that you are allowed to criticize those above you. And both of them do that to some degree. Anyway, they're both good books. They're relatively easy to find, and I hope you read them. Hope you enjoy them. Until next time, this is Michael, the World War II book guy, out here.